Good good afternoon. It's Michelle Thompson with Resistant Vision, and I encourage you to stay on and watch the whole thing so you can learn the three lessons that life has taught me about time. So we just started Resistant Vision TV last week, and I thought it would actually be useful to say a little bit more about my journey and how I've gotten here and how Resistant Vision came into being. So forgive me, let me settle here. Um, I started my career as a lawyer. Since the time I was 12, I made a decision that I was going to be a lawyer. I was going to practice in Washington, D.C., and I was going to sing opera while I did it. It's an ambitious goal. You'll see how it works shortly. And so I went to Grinnell College. I did all 4 years and I was focused, very focused. And I wanted to make sure that I got to go to law school. And so I went to the University of Iowa for law school after I graduated. And when I graduated, I was fortunate to earn a fellowship that funded my doing work with people with AIDS in Washington, D.C. at an organization called Whitman Walker Clinic. And that was a really lovely soft landing to learn how to practice law and what it was about. I was not in the 70 to 90 hour week range of working, and I actually had a lot of control over my time. When my fellowship ended, I was offered a position with a local labor union that represented women who were healthcare workers, not exclusively women, but most of the membership was women. And I took that position. I was excited to be there. And that's where I started bargaining collective bargaining agreements. That's when my feet were put to the fire. And I just want to say that I absolutely loved both of my jobs. I loved my job at Whitman Walker Clinic supporting people with AIDS, with immigration work, with making sure that they got their public benefits, and doing a little bit of discrimination work as well. And I absolutely love bargaining, collective bargaining agreements, because it was a chance for workers to actually have a say about what they wanted in their workplace and to accomplish that. And they did it so well. So with that said, though, because in the time I put in was in part because I was traveling to tables all over the place. I was helping to pull up, start a campaign at a nursing home on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. I was doing some work in Baltimore. And I lived in DC at the time, and I was also doing work there. So I was driving a lot. And I was having successes at the table. I was bringing contracts to fruition. And it was also taking me 70 to 90 hours a week to do this. I would start my days by sitting down I would move from my bedroom to my office, and I would sit down and start to hammer out the next set of proposals for the next bargaining session. I would grab something to eat. I gotta tell you, I love food. I love food. I know what I eat and when I eat it and why. I couldn't tell you what on earth I ate for breakfast during that time period. I can tell you that once I got in the car to drive up from DC to Baltimore, there was a Starbucks there that I could actually go through a drive-through, and I would order a double shot soy milk latte. Yeah, fully loaded. And drive up to Baltimore. I would be smoking cigarettes on my way. I'd be smoking once I got to the Union Hall, because we did. And it actually helped to ease some of my social anxiety. It served a function. And then I would leave the Union Hall. I would grab something at McDonald's, and then I would drive on the road to the next bargaining table. Now, this is a really lousy diet. I have to say, it was a terrible, terrible diet, right? And I gained a lot of weight in the process. And, but the other thing that happened was this: I was driving one evening to the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and it was odd. It was an odd night. It was raining. I could feel a presence in the car with me, and I think that presence was the child I wanted to have. I was like, oh, yay, this could be a thing. But as I was really feeling into it, all the yeah buts started to come up, right? Like, okay, it's 5:30. I'm on the road to the Eastern Shore of Maryland. How am I supposed to be picking up a child at the end of the day? Like, I can't actually get to DC to pick up a child. Am I supposed to have this baby with me the entire time I'm bargaining? Just bring him with me to the bargaining table? And what kind of hours are that? And yeah, do you really want to be with a mom who's like smoking a cigarette to keep her anxiety together? I said, like, that just didn't make sense. I was also earning $40,000 a year. So I wasn't sure how I was supposed to be paying for childcare anyway, right? It was a lot. And as I was thinking about all of this, I was in tears. I'm like driving in tears and it's raining. That's great. Um, and I knew something had to give, and I didn't know how I was going to give or anything, but something had to give if I wanted to become a mother. Not long after that, I met the person who eventually became my spouse, and she suggested that maybe I could earn a doctorate, which was not on my list of things to do. You believe me. So I went ahead and I applied to NYU, and I started a master's and then eventually did my doctorate in history. I just want to let you know that I don't recommend that people actually go earn doctorates to get out of law. It's it's five, it's a dozen of one, 12 of the other. I forget how that expression goes, but you get the point. It's not less stressful. It was very fulfilling. I loved doing it. I have no regrets, but it definitely wasn't less stressful. And after I earned my doctorate, at that point, I had a child when I graduated. My son was 8. So that actually happened, and I actually got to spend, I mean, what I liked about it is I set it up so that I could spend a lot of time with him and really be with him as a young person. And then I wasn't able to find a full-time faculty position, tenure track faculty position. So I was teaching part-time in a bunch of schools. I live in Manhattan and Staten Island in New Jersey, so it was a lot of schlepping, and I didn't have a car, right? And I was teaching all these classes, but wasn't earning enough income to actually pay my bills. In some ways, I was finding myself in the same position I was when I was leaving, when I was thinking something had to give with the union, right? I'm working a whole lot of hours for very little money, and I'm exhausted. I was just exhausted. So I've been part of a peer counseling organization that was volunteer for about 20 years at that point. And I knew that I had a skill here. I just didn't want to have to volunteer anymore. And I'm still in the organization, but I was like, how do I take this skill and actually figure out how to make enough money to support myself? So I opened my email, and there was an email saying we're giving away scholarships to become a coach. I'm like, oh, I'm not sure I know exactly what a coach is, but if we're going to get a scholarship for this, I'm all in. So I filled out the application, and it turned out that this person had also at one point been a member of this organization, and he like approved the application, which is exciting. And I learned how to be a coach, and I've been doing that, since I think about 2015, and I have had zero regrets. In this time, that I learned how to become a coach, I started, the first business was Michelle Dion Thompson Coaching and Consulting, where we worked with academics and scholars to build sustainable careers. And not a lot hasn't changed a whole lot in the last few years. I don't know. So 2022, I think it was 2021 maybe. I changed the business to Resistant Vision Coaching and Consulting. And in future videos, I will tell you the origin of that name and what it means. And so once I did that, it was about a year later that where I was teaching was saying, hey, it's time to come back in person, but it was before there were vaccines. And I'm like, nope. Turns out that was a good idea for many reasons, but I decided I was going to just go all in on Resistant Vision. And that's what's here now. In this time, I have published an article on a journal. I have submitted an article for another publication. So I'm not far away from what I did in my doctorate. When I talk about resistant vision and what it means, I will talk a little bit more about my research. And I'm also currently working on a book that is a substantial revision of my dissertation, but I think it still has something to offer in this day and age. And while I've done that, I still run Resistant Vision, and I still go out and I meet lawyers and talk to them about what to do. So how am I doing that? And my son is now in college. He's a sophomore in college. How do I do all of this? And I should also, yeah, we'll just say that my son is in college. Um, so how on earth, right? If I'm going for a job where I'm working 70 to 90 hours a week, to academia, which can be just as demanding, to publishing and running a business and all of the things. How on earth do I do that? And that's where the 3 lessons about time comes into place. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. Number one, the first lesson I've learned is that the more time I spend working, the less I accomplish. And that came from my union days, right? When I am, furiously doing this, and then I'm off in the car and all the meetings and right, all of that. It was very little time for me to put the table at the core of what I was doing. And I think many of our lives as lawyers look like that, right? We step into the office and we might have an agenda item, but everybody pulls at us. And I don't know, it feels like they steal our time. I don't know if they steal our time, but it feels like we are definitely not in control of it. And that's part of why we feel like we have no time. Part of it's just the way that the legal field is. But that's what I help people with, to actually figure out how to take charge of their time again so they can do what they want to do. So that's the first lesson I learned about the time. The second is this, that there's no such thing as a lack of time. Oh, that might seem confronting. I understand that. It is. But I think if we decide that there's lack, then there will be lack. What I've been playing with over the last actually week, very new for me, is this, that when I allot more time to do something, it generally takes less time than I've allotted to do it. And that means that I actually free up time to do the things I want to do, to do the other things I want to do, which doesn't mean I'm not doing what it is what it is, right? So it's not that there's a lack of time. It's like, how do I allocate my time for things to make sure that I can really accomplish what I'm trying to do in a day? And then the third thing that's related, it's a corollary, if you will, to there's no such thing as a lack of time, is that what you focus on grows. So if you decide that there's no lack of time, you're going to focus on that and you're going to see that all of the time. You're always going to see that I'm time poor. I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. That's all you're going to see. But when you actually decide to be more expansive about it, right? In my case, it was like, I'm just going to assign 90 minutes to do something instead of 30 minutes. It turns out there is a lot of time. It actually only took 30 minutes. And now I have time to handle something else that I really wanted to prioritize and do. So those are my 3 lessons, that the more time I spend working, the less I get done, that there's no lack of time, and what you focus on grows. Those are the kinds of things that we work with lawyers who are working 70, 90 hours a week to be more productive so they can actually have more time for their health, to rest, and to build the families and communities they want. And to learn more about that, feel free to contact me at info@resistantvision.com. If this video was useful to you and you think it would be useful to somebody else, please go ahead and share it. Please follow and like my channel. I would appreciate that so we can get the word out about Resistant Vision TV. And I'm sure there was something else, but I don't remember. Oh, yes. If you want 7 steps to a productive day, it's my guide for starting to manage all of the demands that show up when we sit down to do our work. I'm going to put the link in the notes for this episode and go ahead and grab that. Thank you. Namaste, as it said, and have a lovely day, and I will see you next week.